Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday, y'all. And welcome to another episode of FPP Live, which stands for Faith, Purpose, Profit. A time we connect all things faith with purpose and profit. And yes, you need all three if you're going to live as the highest and best version of who God created you to be. So, those of you that are new, I'm Nicole Roberts Jones, known as the Bankroll Your Brains expert. Always excited and blessed to be here with you to pour more strategy into you. So, a couple things as you come in. Always like to say, tell me hello at least speak to a sister. My commitment is to be here for 30 minutes. I try to do it or less. Sometimes I go a little over, but grab your pen. And as you're here and I'm pouring into you, if anything is resonating with you, I want to know. Give me some hearts. If I'm stepping on your toes, give me some fire emojis. Hey, you know what's so funny? Is it Janice? Is it Jenica? Girl, phonetically sounded out so I can say your name right because I should know your name by now. Anyway, so I'm going to pour in. And so we are continuing in a series. It's a 7-part series. And tonight is our 5th part. The series is called Income with Impact. The thing that's really interesting is, in addition to you having the strategy you need to grow your business, you need that. But then you've also got to understand the environment that your business is sitting in. So, this series, the intention for it, the previous series, I talked to you about your purpose was meant to profit. Now I'm looking at all that's around your purpose because if you don't do both, you're already setting up your business to fail. Because everywhere you go, there you be. You can't avoid you in the middle of it all. And so I want to check in with these principles. Some of you are going to think, oh, I already know that. It's one thing to know it, it's another thing to activate it. Okay. So, by the way, when I say principles, and I didn't do this last week and it just dawned on me, so this is my iPad with my dictionary up, as you can see. So, principles means, according to the dictionary, a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as a foundation for a system of belief or behavior. So these things, if you're not clear where you could be thrown off track, it's going to be the principles that make up the environment your purpose dwells in. Okay. So our conversation for this week is grace under pressure. Grace under pressure. First, I was going to say grace under fire, but I thought, pressure is even better because when I think about what a diamond is, before it's a diamond, it's a lump of coal. That diamond has to go through the fire. And it's not just about it being fire, fire is pressure. There are other things that have to go through pressure. And order, even like a pearl, which is inside a oyster. The pressure you've got to do to open up that oyster to get that pearl. And so you've got to understand, just like a diamond, just like a pearl, if you're going to be a gem, a valuable gem to God, well, you already are. But in order for you to refine yourself, you've got to go through some pressure. What I think is so interesting, what most people don't realize is entrepreneurship is not easy. It's not easy, but everything you go through is worth it when you get on the other side and realize that God has something bigger for you on the other side. But when things happen to you, challenges that you go through happen to grow you. So do you stay in and learn the lesson and grow yourself, or do you quit? What I've realized in this work, and this is from my own journey, everything I teach, I'm not somebody that just talks a talk. I'm somebody that walks it, lives it, learns it, and then I teach it because God then shows me to teach it. I don't realize I'm learning it for anybody but me. But think about all the pressures you go through just in your personal life. The betrayals you may have gone through when, and maybe some of this may not happen to you, but something close to you realize your husband or your mate is dating your best friend or somebody that you know. Or you share a project, an idea for some project you want to do, and then somebody on your team steals it, presents it, and acts like it's theirs. Do I need to go on, or are you getting my point? So even as a business owner, there are pressures and challenges you go through. And oftentimes, if you don't stop and check yourself, what's that? Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because listen, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Even someone's known you for a while, when a word comes out of your mouth, you can't take an eraser and go, ooh, erase that, erase what I just did. And so who you be in the middle of that pressure, is it going to propel you into your purpose, or it's going to dissipate you away from it? So if I give you an example, when I think I shared this with you all. So, and well, I know I should share this. You all know I do a 2-day intensive Be the Answer. I'll invite you to that later. When I first started doing it in COVID, first of all, I was going to not do it. Because I was like, how could I do this virtual when I coach? It's a lot of coaching. And part of what I do, dare I say, part of my gift, and this is giving God all the credit, is I can see where you're stuck. I can see your purpose and I can see in between. And what I do when I do it, Be the Answer, when the event is live, is in the room I can feel when your purpose is stirring and you're stuck. And I thought, I can't do that virtual, baby. Can I tell you that I can? But in between me seeing that I could do it and me actually believing that I could, I was like, oh my God, so scared when I did my first virtual event. So I did my first virtual event in October of 2020. So cut to, that was in Boston. Now, thankfully, my undergraduate degree, TV and film, came in handy. So I see how all things work together for the good. Because when I started calling TV stations, TV broadcast stations, and asking about shooting my event, because this is not a normal event, by the way, y'all. This is not another Zoom meeting. Oh, it's a full on produced event. So, with that said, the production team I ended up hiring for my first event was blown away that I knew all this stuff. Yeah, I went to TV. I went to, I have an undergraduate degree in TV and film. So I'm sharing that with you because then I'm moving to DC. So I start looking for a partner here in DC to produce my events. And so I find a African American studio, and I always want to try to support African Americans because I'm Black. Why would I not have, recycle Black dollars anyway? So, so get to the studio. Let me tell you guys all the things that went wrong during that production. My entire team, and see if Meaty pops up because Meaty can tell it. So listen, the lights were going down and I was still teaching. My mic went out at one point, and Meaty was on the floor crawling underneath me. No one could see her. When was holding my computer as my microphone because I was going to keep teaching. Lights falling, Wi-Fi going out. I mean, just all kind of stuff happening around me. And in our breaks, I didn't go off on the producer. I said, "What can we do to fix this? What is it that we need to do to fix this?" And Meaty was like, "Girl, you know what?" Right, and not just Meaty. My event producer was like, "Girl, that's all you gonna say? Listen, grace under pressure. Me yelling at him is not gonna make it any better. What can I do in this moment to serve my clients?" That was what my focus is on. But it took me years to get to this. It took me years to understand that you've got to have grace. Let me tell you what grace means. According to the dictionary, it means elegance or beauty of form, manner, motion, or action. It means moral strength. Now, let me tell you, Nicole, because I'm from South Central LA, those of you that don't know me. So she was present. Oh, she was riling up at me. So at one point, I just sat down, we were on break, and I wasn't talking to anybody. I had to tell my team later at dinner, the reason I did that is I could feel the anger raging up in me. And so I'm going to give you principles. I'm going to walk you through some of the things I learned to do prior to that moment. But that wasn't the first challenge I've had in my business. And it wasn't the first day. The second day was even worse. He promised the first day, oh, I'm going to recalibrate everything. We'll be straight. The second day was even worse. All I could do was stay focused on how can I serve my clients? They don't need to suffer because I'm suffering. And the people that attended had no idea other things were going on. Of course, we told them later. Why am I sharing that with you? Because you've got to be really, really clear that in the middle of everything, there's going to be pressure. Pressure makes diamonds. If you're going to shine, then you're going to go through some pressure. And so, as you know, those of you that have been with us for week after week, Joseph is our guide for our conversations. So, as I share with you the Bible verse I'm using for this conversation, I'm also, as I give you the 4 steps to apply grace under pressure, I'm also going to walk you through a little bit of review. I'm going to share some new things, but I'm going to show you how the last 4 weeks speak now to this, because the way I teach, I build on the next. So, by the way, if you missed any episode, I'm going to encourage you to go listen to the podcast. So again, it started with Income with Impact. That was episode 1. And I'll name all the other episodes as we go through. Because I'm telling you, you need all 7 of these principles at play. And the ones you don't have at play yet, you need to grow them. And listen, some of them you may have them at play at this level. But as my pastor used to say, new level, new devil. So it gets bigger. If you don't learn it now, you won't learn it there. Okay. And to be quite honest with you, I'm in a moment of challenge in my business right now. My business is growing so fast that I can barely keep up. Then I have health challenges going on right now. Not in a bad way, but I have doctor's appointments, and listen, I have allergy issues, and I got dental appointments. It's like a whole stream of things all at the same time. And I realize all of them are happening to me at the same time because I keep saying my next big breakthrough must be getting ready to happen. My business must be getting ready to really mount up. Because when you go through challenges, that's the enemy trying to distract you. I talked about that in another episode as well. So let me start breaking down these 4 so I can keep you to your 30 minutes. All right. So Let me talk to you about, oh, first let me share the portion of Joseph's story that kind of is our guide for this conversation. It's Genesis 45, 4 through 8. So as you know, Joseph, we talked about Joseph was the favorite of his brothers. Father loved him because he was the son that got, first of all, he was the son that was born in his old age. But if you know his father's story, Jacob had to marry the first wife, which wasn't his chosen wife, because he really wanted her sister. So he had to marry her first and then the sister. Joseph is the daughter of the sister. And I'm only saying that so I don't confuse you with names and all that stuff right now. Okay. So, with all of that said, he tells his brothers, listen, I had this vision that I was going to be in charge and pretty much I'm going to feed all of us. Oh, so you telling us you're going to be in charge of us? Oh, you're going to be the Lord over us? Oh, you know his brothers were already hating him because he had favor. Oh, now you're going to tell me you're going to be over me? You're going to be the majesty over me? Yeah, no. So they plotted to kill him. Didn't kill him. They decided to put him to sell him to slavery. I'm telling you guys a quick Cliff Note version. Okay, this starts in Genesis, the 37th chapter, excuse me. So all along the way, he gets sold into slavery. He goes to Egypt. Then he becomes chief in Potiphar's house, who is the head of the whole army. Okay. So there he is with favor again. Now, let you know God is with him. He works in Potiphar's house. He is in command, meaning that he has charge over everything. He's a slave, but in charge of everything. So then Potiphar's wife one day realizes, he kind of cute. So listen, he says, she says, listen, I get distracted, y'all. I get excited. I see people, hey, Akima. So listen, she goes, he kind of fine. Let me see if I can get him to sleep with me. So to make a long story short, he won't. So she's mad now and looks for revenge and lies and says that he tried to rape her. He gets thrown in jail. So he went from being a slave to going to jail. And yet this man never gets bitter. He never gets bitter. He goes to jail. And he meets two of the cupbearer and chef, a baker. And he interprets their dreams. And they say, oh, we're going to remember you, tell the king about you when we get out. They get out, they forget about him. It's 3 more years before the king has a dream and Joseph can interpret it. So he comes out of prison to interpret the king's dream. And to make a long story short, he interprets the king's dream and pretty much says, we can go through a famine. You need to put somebody in charge that can handle it. So the king said, well, shoot, if God can give you the interpretation of the dream, that means you can handle it. So therefore, guess what? The vision he had at the beginning of being in charge, he now is in that place. So cut to a few years later, his brothers have to come to Egypt to get food. And here is what, and they think their brother is dead. Y'all with me? That was a quick version. I'm encourage you to go read the whole thing. By the way, if you go back and listen to the previous episodes, again, fpppodcast.com will give you the part 1 and part 2 from each of those episodes. So listen, now, after all that time, they think their brother's dead. So they go to Egypt. And here's what Joseph says to his brothers. This is Genesis 45, 4 through 8. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years, the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which they will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a prosperity for you in the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father of Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt. So in other words, it's about saying, oh, don't worry, I'm not mad at y'all. I got you. See, all that happened was for such a time as this. Hello, Esther. Y'all know it's my favorite girl. So listening to that and knowing everything he went through, I want to share with you 4 steps that you can have grace like Joseph, grace like Esther, grace like David, in the middle of what could be a challenge. Listen, when David faced Goliath, it was grace that had him understand how to deal with that. And by the way, pressure, the definition for pressure is the stress or urgency of matters demanding attention. So oftentimes when we feel pressure, we run from it. But listen, if you don't run from it, if you run from it in this place, you know it keeps showing up. Because if God is allowing it, there's some lesson for you to learn. And if you never deal with it, even though you flee from here and you go over here, it's there too. When you go here and go over here, it's there too, but it gets bigger because God is going to put you on repeat until you learn the lesson. You will be on repeat and it gets louder and louder and louder until you learn the lesson. So don't run from it. Stand in it and find the grace that you need to get through the pressure, right? To rise above it and shine. So number one, you got to hit pause. Now listen, I talk about this often because you can either fall apart and get all hysterical, or you can choose in that moment to trust God. So when you hit pause, it's to stop and check in with yourself. See, oftentimes when there's pressure, you're going to be frustrated or angry or tired or overwhelmed, and all these emotions that could make you want to quit. So I talked about this in episode number 2. And episode number 2 was called Delay is an Indicator for Business Success. See, sometimes God hits pause, but if you realize what you're doing and you hit pause first, oh, it's a different experience. It's like when you study for a test and you show up, you take it and you pass, you get 100%. But when you don't study for the test, you fail and you got to take it over and over and over again. That's what happens when you are in delay. God is looking for you to pass the test first, or you won't advance to the next grade. Come on, somebody. Just like we did in high school and elementary school, y'all know. So I'm sharing this with you because I shared this in episode number 2, E plus R equals O. Your emotions plus your reaction that you allow to come from your emotions equals the outcome. I'm not going to dig into that again. Go back and listen to episode 2 if you missed it. But what you got to understand, if you don't hit pause, this is the being work I always talk to you about. They call us human beings, but we're not. We're human doings. So it's when you sit in your being that God speaks to your soul. So I'm going to tell you, just this past week, and God began to show me what I'm teaching you right now, because I have had so much pressure on me. My poor assistant has been feeling it because I've been like, I need this, I need this. And I was like, you know what? Let me breathe and realize I'm doing too much. I need to hit pause because there's so much coming at me and I hadn't stopped long enough to strategize around it. And if you don't strategize, what happens? The stress gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you lose it in some kind of way, whether it's a yelling at somebody, whether it's making bad decisions. Y'all with me? So you've got to be clear and sit in your being time. So one is hit pause. Okay. So when you're nervous or irritated or scared or upset, and this is for anything, this could be bad breakup. This could be your boss who doesn't appreciate your brilliance. This is not just about your business. This is for everything. Because again, everywhere you go, there you are. So sometimes you need to pause yourself and sit and ask yourself what's up with you right now so you can really begin to shift what's happening with you. If you missed episode 2, I'm going to go back and encourage you to go listen to it. Again, that one's called Delay is an Indicator for Business Success. So the second thing you got to do is cut the cord. Now listen. Now you guys have heard me probably use this whole analogy of you being pregnant with your purpose. So some of you guys have birthed your purpose, but you still got that umbilical cord hanging. Meaning that maybe there's some things you went through to push the baby out. Maybe some things that people said about you while you were pushing the baby out. And you have that cord still attached to you, meaning that you got to let it go. You've got to realize that it's present. Listen to this Bible verse, Isaiah 43:18-19. Do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall come forth. What's it spring forth? Shall you not know it? I will even make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Now this is God talking to the children of Israel. Now listen to the Message version. Forget about what happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers in the Badlands. So if I bring this out, forget about what happened. And I talked about this last week in episode number 4. And episode number 4 was called, bam, the substance of business success, right? See, oftentimes we're so focused on what we've been through that we're judging where we are right now through the glasses of our past. And we're dragging that around with us like a bag lady. Do you know why, by the way, they make you weigh your bags when you get on the airplane? Because if the is too heavy, the airplane will crash. That's why we lost Aaliyah years ago. The airplane was too heavy. So many of you guys need to cut the cord of all the baggage you're carrying around with you of what happened to you in your past. Maybe you started a business before and it didn't work. Okay, you learned a lesson there. Learn a lesson, move forward. Don't be bitter, be better. Maybe a relationship didn't work. This was me, because baby, my previous relationship, and y'all hear me use this as an example all the time because it was a public, it could have been humiliating breakup. I met my husband the next day. And it was only because I shifted so quick. I sat in I hit pause and sat in my being, and God began to show me all the stuff that He was getting ready to do. I was like, "Thank you, Lord, for saving me from that Titanic." Hello, but it's not until you hit pause that God can speak to you. He's not going to speak to you in busy, and then you got to cut the cord because I know that the enemy brings those challenges to you. So when you go through something close to it, it's like a bruise. If you don't heal that bruise, every time you bump up against it, it hurts, right? So I talked about this and what do you have around you in episode one when I talked about income with impact. Because if you don't look at all the things that are in your environment, the people you have around you, the way they're talking to you, they're either adding to your purpose or taking away from it. I know, and this is what Joseph's brothers did, by the way. And when I first started my business, it was in 1993. There was no such thing as a coach. So all my friends, the first few that I told that I was crazy, so I started telling people. Because if people were going to tell me it was crazy, it was going to make me not believe what I know God told me that I needed to do. And I felt crazy, by the way. But I'm going to trust God over my flesh every day. So you've got to cut the cord on anything that could hold you back and then not look to pay people back, right? This is one of the things I talked about in episode number 3. Can you handle it? When I talked about all the temptations that Joseph went through, especially after the wife lied. You think Joseph, listen, in his flesh didn't for a minute think I need to pay her back. I'm gonna get her back. And then he probably said, you know what? I'm gonna let God deal with that. There's a Bible verse that says, let me find it. And I wrote it in here somewhere. Here it is. Romans 12:19. Beloved, do not avenge yourself, but rather give place to wrath, for it's written, vengeance is mine, I will pay, says the Lord. When I do not, I remember a boss I had, my one of the last bosses I had in the entertainment industry, and he was just a hole. Just there's no other way for me to describe it. Just a jerk. And our clients, and this is when I worked in management, we used to manage comedians. Our clients wouldn't talk to him. They started calling me because they didn't like him either. And he'd get mad at me because they were calling me and would not talk to him. So I remember one day he threw a notebook at me. And I said, ooh, if I don't walk out this office right now. So I just picked the notebook up, threw it on his desk, and walked out of that office, got in my car, and went home because I already knew what was going to happen if I stayed. And so the president of the company called me and said, why did you leave? And I explained to him what happened. And he said to me, and I quote, I promise you, if you come back, I promise you he'll be gone. I just need you to hang in there with me. But he will go. And did it get worse? It got worse. But I trusted what the president told me. Do you know within months, he got fired and I got moved up to a junior manager? I'm sharing that with you because oftentimes the challenges, you don't know what God is doing on the other side of that. You don't know how God is using that to propel you. So you've got to trust in that moment if you can let go of what your flesh says that you need to get him back or angry. Like, I could have called every client, but I didn't. And the clients used to call and talk about him bad. And I would go, okay, so that's not what you called me about. Tell me what you need. I would change the subject. I would never entertain them talking about him. So you've got to be clear on in that moment, who do you need to be? Where's that grace? Because pressure would say, oh, I'm about to get him fired because I could have. And I had no intention of telling anything to the president. I think one of our clients told the president what happened. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you, after he let him go, when I quit entertainment, that person was one of my favorite bosses of all time. It was hard for me to walk away from entertainment because of him. And his name is Stan. Stan Latham, my favorite boss of all time. Hard for me to walk away from entertainment because of Stan. He was so great. So you got to understand, and I said this last week. I read this Bible verse last week, brethren. I read this in Rich in My Niche, going through a 4-week series, as some of you know. Not Rich in My Niche, My Rich Journey. I'm doing a 4-week series. This is the 4th week. If you haven't been joining us, you can go on over to my Facebook group, thebridgetribe.com, and catch up. This Thursday is part 4, our last part. Now, I broke this down in last week's training. Philippians 3:13-14. Brother, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which lie ahead, I press. So if you're going to have grace under pressure, it's all about pressing toward the mark. It's about what do you need to do to get there, not to deal with all this other stuff, all the haters and all the people talking about you, all the people doing bad things about you. Let God deal with that. I've seen people get fired. I've seen people just the way God does stuff is ways that I could have never done it. I can give you guys several examples on that, but we don't have that kind of time. Okay. So you've got to be really, really clear on what is it that you want to get out of this moment? What will give God the greatest glory out of this moment? Is it revenge? No, that's going to give you the greatest glory in the moment. And by the way, that moment is fleeting because just think of it like this. What just jumped in my head. It's like a gang member. I know this is a bad example, but roll with me. It makes sense. So when one gang member tries to retaliate another one, what happens? When one gang member retaliates something, then that retaliation comes back and it goes back and back and forth and it never ends. That's what revenge does. Not only that, but revenge is such a negative emotion in your body. And so you're holding on to that grudge until you can get them back and you feel relieved from it. But then all they're going to do is turn around and try to get you back. That's no way to live. So if Joseph would have spent all his time in jail plotting against Ham to get his wife back, when he got out, he could have gotten his wife back, but I bet you he'd be back in jail instead of being chief in command. Are y'all getting my point? So even with that DC studio I told you about, I could have held a grudge. I could have acted a complete fool, but I didn't. All I said to him is, you do realize, and I wrote, according to your contract, very professional, this didn't work. And I sent him an email. I didn't say anything in person. I said, we'll talk. Because I knew I needed to calm down. I had to hit pause first. Okay. I had to, second, all the times I've had bad business dealings, I didn't look at him from that. And by the way, can I tell you, in that moment, I told you guys a few minutes ago, I was calming myself down. I opened up my Facebook just to look. Do you know I saw an opening of Elevation Media, which is where I've done my last 3 virtual Be the Answers in Baltimore, right outside of Baltimore. And I said, okay, Lord, that must be my answer. And I only saw it because I hit pause. I sent her an email while I was sitting there mad at him. That's the truth. God had already showed me my way. But had I acted out how I felt, I wouldn't have seen that partner. And have things been 100% phenomenal? Things happen. But I'm going to tell you, Cassandra, the president of Elevation Global Media, as soon as something happens bad, I look up and I'm like, what happened to so-so? Oh, he's gone. A new one's on their way. She fixes it. So I could have held on to what happened with him and looked at her through those glasses, especially the first time something went wrong, because stuff is going to go wrong, y'all. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. But she fixed it quickly, unlike my previous partner. Y'all with me? You get that? So you've got to cut the umbilical cord, meaning that stop carrying the baggage of other places you've been and looking at this like it's that. Listen, this is not that. The tools you used on this level are not sufficient for your next. That's why you need new tools. Some of you guys need to learn to let go because you holding on to all this baggage is keeping you stuck where you are. Listen, there's a story in Genesis where Abraham's son, Lot, God told Lot to leave and Lot went to, God didn't tell Lot to leave. Lot went to another area. He decided he wanted to go out on his own and he went to Sodom. Now you guys have heard the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So it got so bad that God instructed Lot and his wife to leave. So this is Genesis 19:17. Or excuse me, 19:17. He said, don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. He said, leave and don't look back. Well, by Genesis 19:26, quoting, but his wife looked back behind him and she became a pillar of salt. She became stuck right where she was. God said, don't look back, forgetting those things which are behind. Even the Isaiah Bible verse, do not remember the former things. So you learn a lesson from what people have put you through. You learn a lesson and you realize that's who they are. You accept for who they are. You don't let them do it again, but you don't need to be bitter. Are there people that have done me wrong? Like, do you know I saw that same DC studio owner at another event? And I said, hey, so-and-so. And such said, who was that? I said, oh, that's the guy that did it. And they were like, and you were that nice. Oh, girl, I'm good. I just know I'll never hire him again. But I'm not going to be mean. That's over. As Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. There's a reason why she said the first time at the end of that quote. Because oftentimes people show us who they are and then we just keep acting like we didn't see it. Oh, we see things happen around us and we act like they're not present. Cut the umbilical cord, got to cut the cord. The number three. Now, number one, let me repeat again, is you got to hit pause. Number two, you've got to cut the cord. So whatever attachment you have to that thing that happened to you, even if some of that is, dare I say, I'm gonna say this with all the love in me, is maybe you've gone through some abusive things. Maybe someone has violated you. And I'm not discounting what you've been through, but what I am saying is cut the attachment to it. That doesn't make you who you are. That's something you've been through. But you can either let it stand on you or you can stand on it. Up to you. Grace under pressure. How do you learn the lesson and rise above it? Okay. So, number one, hit pause. Number two, cut the cord. Number three is you must have unwavering faith. Now, I talked about this last week, but I got to say this one more time. So, last week, again, well, not last week. Was that last week? That was last week. So, that was week 4. Bam! The substance of things hoped for. I said week 3 earlier. That was week 4. Okay. So, listen, when we look at Joseph as our example, he had unstoppable faith. So listen, it's about risking it all to gain it all. See, oftentimes when you're in a challenging place, it doesn't look like there's a way out. I believe God puts us in those situations so that he can see if he can trust you. Will you do what it takes to not give up? Will you do what it takes to do it afraid, to have faith even though you can't see it? Again, Hebrews 11:1, y'all. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. What you gonna do when you can't see? See, God does his best work in the dark. It's kind of like back in the day when we took pictures and we used to have to go into a dark room. Y'all remember that? We don't have to do that anymore because we take pictures from our phone. But back in the day, in order to develop a picture, you had to be in the darkest room. And so God does his best development in the dark when you can't see. When all he's saying is, trust me, I got you. You can't see that you're going to be sold into slavery, move to Egypt. You're going to be you're going to go here. Your dad loves you. Then you get sold to slavery. Then you get head of the all the slaves. Then the Pharaoh's wife or Potiphar's wife lies, so you get put back in jail. You don't see all the stuff you go through, but the end of it is better than the beginning if you endure and have grace in the middle of it. So we're going to dig more into this in part 2, but let me just say this. It was effortless for Joseph to forgive because he realized, despite how his brothers are being, despite how the haters were hating, how despite all they plotted against him, he knew, as it says in Romans 8:28. Now I'm going to read 8:28, 8:29, because we often quote one without the other. And we know that all things work together for the good, for those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. Now here's 29. For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. So this is all things that work together for good. Then it says right after that, for whom he foreknew. So he knew you were going to go through. Matter of fact, God allows all of it. You know, oftentimes now that I know these things, I've learned these things, I'm like, okay, Lord, I must be getting ready to be blessed beyond measure because all of this is hard. So I choose not to give up. I choose to trust God. Is it easy? Heck to the no. That's why that being time is so important. That's why the tools you use to grow yourself in that being time is so important. Now, there's a fourth thing you've got to do, and I'm going to walk through that in part 2. But before we get to part 2, I want you to really think about the 3 steps I just gave you. Hit pause. What can you do to hit pause? Do you need like physically have a button on yourself to pause yourself? So for me, I sit still, I'm silent. So if you ever see me in a meeting and I'm quiet, baby, you need to know I'm pissed. But I hit pause, so I'm silent. You got to cut the cord. If there's any attachment to something that happened to you in your past and it's triggering you in that moment, even if you feel the trigger happening, you've got to press pause, because what happens in that emotional place is not going to be good, and you can't take it back once it's out. And then you got to have unwavering faith. But the fourth step is, to me, kind of the yummiest. But I really want you to look at, where are you? And give yourself some time. Listen, if you don't sit in your being time, if you don't sit in quiet contemplation, I'm going to encourage you to start doing that. Because sometimes things happen throughout your day and it's throwing you off. And when you're out of alignment, just like our cars we need to take our cars for a tune-up. Sometimes you need a spiritual tune-up. Because if you're out of alignment, your purpose will not come to fruition. Yeah, you need strategy, but you also need to be aligned to the environment that's happening around you. And sometimes you don't even realize what's happening around you until God begins to speak to you and show you. When God shows you who people are, believe Him the first time. So with that, we'll dig into this even more in part two. Part two happens tomorrow morning, Clubhouse, 8:30 a.m. EST. Listen, if you have questions, come to Clubhouse in the morning. You know why? Because I can hear your voice. On here, all you can do is hear me, right? So I'm going to encourage you to come on over to Clubhouse so that I can hear you. You can ask questions. You can hear me. So I'll give you the fourth and final step. But I also leave time for questions while we're together in Clubhouse, right? And so many of you also know that you need more strategy. I'm giving you the principles and the environment, but you need strategy to grow your business. So I'm going to always invite you till we're sold out. Matter of fact, you need to register by next Tuesday to guarantee your swag box gets to you on time. So if you've been thinking about coming to Be the Answer, grab your seat, betheanswerintensive.com. 2 days, me pouring all the strategy you need into you. Oh, and I give you more being work. So when you start the bonus program right away, when you register, that is where that being work is. And we have so much more in between before we get to September 30th and October 1st virtually. So betheanswerintensive.com. If you know, like you know, now's your time. You need the strategy. Oh, and you need some more principal work. I got you because I'm giving you both. All right. So with that said, I look forward to seeing many of you tomorrow morning as we dig more into part two in this conversation. That's in Clubhouse. All you got to do is go to fppbreakfast.com. Matter of fact, if you don't follow me, go on over there and follow me just because it'll notify you when we're live, just in case you might forget. All right. So with that said, it's my honor and privilege to always be here and pour more and more into you. If you're going to live as the highest and best version of who God created you to be, you've got to be clear on what could throw you off track. It's my commitment and my calling to give you all that I can to make sure you don't. All right. So with that, I'll see many of you in the morning. Have a good rest of your evening. Bye, y'all.